Have you ever gazed up at the night sky or out across a raging ocean and felt like we barely scratched the surface of understanding this world? We're used to believing that 21st century science can explain every phenomenon, neatly categorize every mystery. But what if I told you that our planet and the entire universe are still brimming with enigmas, mysteries that baffle even the brightest minds humanity has ever produced? In this video, we're embarking on a journey through 30 of the most inexplicable natural phenomena. These aren't just oddities, they are genuine challenges to modern science, forcing us to question whether we truly understand the fundamental laws of reality. Brace yourselves, some of these mysteries might just shatter your current perception of the world. Are you sure you're ready? Before we dive in, let's clarify what unexplained actually means from a scientific perspective. It certainly doesn't mean we're dealing with magic or supernatural forces. The scientific method is a process. It relies on observation, hypotheses, experimentation, and verification. When scientists label a phenomenon as unexplained, they mean that they currently lack sufficient data to construct a confirmable theory, or that existing, well-established theories simply cannot fully account for the observed phenomenon. Each of the mysteries we'll discuss today isn't a failure of science, it's the cutting edge. These are the fields where breakthroughs are happening right now, where researchers are actively struggling to find solutions, and where every new piece of evidence has the potential to turn everything we know upside down. So, let's take a look at these 30 challenges that nature has thrown our way. So let's start with an anomaly that is barely perceptible, yet utterly maddening. Picture the quiet desert town of Taos, New Mexico. The camera slowly drifts over its adobe houses set against a crimson sunset. It's idyllic. But for some residents, this silence is deceptive. They hear it. A low-frequency, constant, exhausting hum. This phenomenon has been dubbed the Taos hum. The strangest part is its selectivity. Only about 2% of the population can hear it. For them, it's not just a noise, it's a physical sensation, a persistent vibration that permeates the walls and never stops, day or night. Mass complaints first surfaced in the early 90s, and scientists have been trying to pinpoint the source ever since. What could it be? The first obvious thought was industrial noise. Researchers thoroughly checked all local factories, power lines, and military installations. They used the most sensitive acoustic equipment available, but recorded nothing that could account for the persistent droning. Furthermore, the sound seems to defy the laws of acoustics. It doesn't get quieter or louder when you move, and it cannot be blocked out with noise-cancelling headphones. This led to the second hypothesis. Could it be a mass manifestation of tinnitus, a persistent ringing in the ears? However, doctors examining the hearers found no specific auditory issues. Crucially, people reported that the hum stopped entirely when they left the Taos area, strongly suggesting an external source. The third theory plunges beneath the surface. Some geologists speculated that the hum might result from tectonic plate movement or other seismic processes creating infrasound, a low-frequency wave only perceived by a few hypersensitive individuals. But again, there is no convincing evidence. Seismographs in the region show no anomalous activity. Similar hums have been recorded in other parts of the world, such as Bristol, England, and Bondi, Australia. Collectively, they are known simply as the hum. For those who hear it, this isn't an academic mystery. It's daily torture, causing insomnia, headaches, and crippling anxiety. Science, however, is still shrugging its shoulders. Perhaps we are dealing with an unknown form of energy, or a unique interaction between geology and human perception. The Taos hum is the perfect example of a mystery residing at the very edge of our sensory world. It is a sound that essentially doesn't exist, yet it has the power to drastically alter a person's life. The enigma lies not only in its source, but in its selectivity. Why do some hear it while others do not? Is it a unique characteristic of their auditory systems? Or are they tuned into a frequency unavailable to the rest of us? While we await answers, the hum continues to drone in the New Mexico desert, reminding us that the greatest mysteries can be completely silent to the vast majority. Let's transition from sound to light. We're talking about a phenomenon long dismissed as sailors' folklore, or a tall tale, but whose reality is now accepted, even if its nature remains elusive. Ball lightning. Picture this scene: a stormy night, pouring rain, when suddenly a glowing sphere the size of a soccer ball drifts right into the room, sometimes passing through a closed window. It moves slowly through the air, often crackling and emitting a distinct smell of ozone, before it either silently fades away or explodes with a deafening boom. This isn't a scene from a sci-fi movie. It's a typical account of an encounter with ball lightning. Thousands of eyewitnesses globally have reported similar stories, but for a long time, scientists remained highly skeptical. The main difficulty was that the phenomenon couldn't be reliably replicated or predicted in a lab. There were no clear photos, and certainly no video evidence. But in 2012, everything changed. Chinese scientists, while studying conventional lightning, accidentally recorded the appearance and disappearance of ball lightning using both video and a spectrometer. Analysis revealed its composition included silicon, iron, and calcium, all major elements found in soil. This discovery spurred a new theory, which is currently the leading hypothesis. It suggests that when a regular lightning bolt strikes the ground, it vaporizes silicon dioxide from the soil. This vapor reacts with carbon, forming a sphere of silicon nanoparticles. This sphere of nanoparticles is the ball lightning. The sphere glows due to the slow oxidation of the silicon by oxygen in the air. This theory successfully explains several points: the composition recorded by the Chinese team, and why ball lightning often appears close to the ground. However, it doesn't account for everything. For instance, how do these spheres manage to pass through walls and windows? Why do they sometimes move against the wind? And how can they persist for several minutes when calculations suggest such a hot cluster should burn up in mere seconds? Other theories exist. One proposes that ball lightning is a blob of plasma held together by its own magnetic field. Another suggests it's microwave radiation, ionizing the air within a confined sphere. There are even more exotic ideas involving microscopic black holes or antimatter, yet none of these models is complete. Every one of them runs into contradictions. For example, the plasma model struggles to explain the long lifespan of the sphere, as hot plasma should rapidly expand and dissipate. Ball lightning remains one of the most beautiful and frightening mysteries of atmospheric electricity. It demonstrates how a phenomenon we think we understand well, the thunderstorm, can generate something that defies our current comprehension. Perhaps its secret lies in new, yet to be discovered, plasma physics, or in exotic quantum effects. While scientists continue to seek answers, ball lightning keeps making occasional appearances during storms, reminding us that even the air we breathe can harbour genuine wonders. Let's take a quick trip back down to Earth, specifically to one of the planet's hottest and most desolate places, Death Valley, California. It's here, on the bed of the dried-up racetrack Playa Lake, that something utterly inexplicable occurs. Picture this: an absolutely flat, cracked clay surface, scattered with huge boulders weighing up to 300 kilograms, and behind them, long, distinct tracks, or grooves, etched into the ground. It looks like something, or someone, has dragged these stones across tens, sometimes even hundreds of meters. This phenomenon is known as the sailing, or sliding rocks. The great mystery, though, is that nobody has ever actually witnessed the movement itself. The stones only shift maybe once every 2 or 3 years, and capturing that moment remained impossible for decades. Countless theories have been proposed to explain this phenomenon. The earliest assumptions involve mysticism, or naturally aliens. But scientists were searching for a much more grounded explanation. One of the first scientific hypotheses suggested that wind moved the stones. Death Valley is prone to hurricane-force winds, sometimes reaching speeds of 105 kilometers per hour. Maybe, after rare rains, the lake surface became slick, allowing the wind to push the boulders. However, calculations proved that even the strongest wind couldn't budge a rock weighing several hundred kilograms. Plus, The rocks' trajectories were often complex. They might turn, move parallel to each other, and then diverge. Wind alone certainly couldn't orchestrate that kind of synchronized swimming. That's when another, more complex theory emerged, the ice theory. According to this idea, a thin layer of water would form on the lakebed during winter, freezing overnight and creating an ice crust around the stones. During the day, the ice would start to thaw, and large ice sheets with the rocks embedded inside them would begin to drift under the push of a light breeze, leaving those grooves behind. This theory seemed highly plausible. It explained both the slow movement and how heavy objects could be shifted. For many years it was the leading explanation, but direct evidence was missing. Scientists installed cameras and GPS trackers, but the rocks remained motionless for years. Finally, in 2014, researchers got lucky. They captured the rock movement on video. It turned out the ice theory was correct, but with crucial qualifications. Movement requires a unique set of circumstances. There must be enough water on the lake to form a thin layer of ice, but not so much that the stones are submerged. The ice then needs to be just the right thickness, strong enough to hold together, yet thin enough to break up. And finally, a light breeze is needed to propel these icy rafts. The mystery seemed solved, but even after this discovery, questions linger. Scientists only confirmed the movement of a few smaller stones. The exact mechanism for shifting truly gigantic boulders, like the famous Karen rock, which weighs over 300 kilograms, has yet to be verified by observation. It's possible they require even rarer and more extreme conditions. Thus, the sliding stones of Death Valley are a perfect example of how science slowly inches toward a solution, yet every answer generates new questions. It's a powerful reminder that nature is an extremely complex mechanism, sometimes requiring the perfect alignment of dozens of factors to kickstart a process. Let's dive into the ocean's depths, a world less explored than the surface of the moon. In 1997, the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, recorded a mysterious sound. Hydrophones placed across the Pacific Ocean, originally set up to track submarines, picked up an ultra-low frequency yet incredibly powerful signal. It was so loud that it registered on sensors placed 5,000 kilometers apart. This sound, codenamed the bloop, lasted for about a minute and structurally resembled a sound made by a living organism. But here was the crucial problem. To generate a sound of that magnitude, the creature responsible would have to be several times larger than the biggest animal on Earth, the blue whale. This discovery immediately captured imaginations worldwide. Theories instantly arose about a gigantic, unknown sea monster lurking in the abyssal depths. People even drew comparisons to HP. Lovecraft's Cthulhu, the mythical entity said to sleep on the Pacific seabed, conveniently close to where the bloop was detected. Scientists, however, remained more reserved. They began analysing the signal's acoustic profile. It was unique. It didn't match the sounds made by whales or other marine life, nor did it resemble signals from earthquakes, underwater volcanoes, or moving ice. The spectrogram displayed a rapid change in frequency, a pattern typically associated with biological sounds. For many years, the mystery of the bloop remained unsolved. It became a symbol of the deep ocean's secrets. Yet scientific investigation pressed on. Researchers continued to gather data and analyse archival recordings. Then, in 2005, the leading theory emerged. Scientists suggested the sound source was likely a massive ice quake, the process of giant icebergs cracking and breaking off the Antarctic shelf. When a glacier calves and begins to move, it generates incredibly powerful acoustic waves. To test this hypothesis, scientists launched an expedition to the Antarctic coast and recorded the sounds emitted by moving icebergs. Analysis showed that their acoustic profile was virtually identical to that of the bloop. This explanation is highly convincing, accounting for both the sound's incredible power and its low frequency. However, as is common in science, some questions linger. Why was the bloop recorded only once in such completeness? Why did its spectrogram contain certain unique characteristics that don't perfectly align with glacier sounds? Some cryptozoologists and enthusiasts still believe the ice theory is merely an attempt to conceal the existence of something far greater. They point out that the ocean remains only a few % explored, arguing we cannot definitively state that nothing gigantic hides in its depths. The bloop is ultimately a story of how scientific pursuit can lead to unexpected conclusions, replacing a romantic mystery with a prosaic, yet equally colossal, natural phenomenon. But deep down, the hope remains for many that somewhere, in that dark abyss, the source of that infamous sound dwells, and that it is anything but ice. Let's turn our attention back to the sky, focusing this time on the cold, secluded Hessdalen Valley in Norway. Here, far removed from major cities and light pollution, one of the world's most mysterious light phenomena is regularly observed. Imagine the night sky stretched above the snow-capped mountains. Suddenly, bright lights pierce the darkness. They can be white, yellow, or red. They might hang motionless in the air, drift slowly across the valley, or zip past at astonishing speeds. Sometimes they appear as solitary spheres, sometimes as entire clusters of light that seem to interact with one another. This phenomenon is known as the Hessdalen lights. It first garnered widespread attention in the early 1980s, when the number of sightings surged, sometimes reaching 20 incidents per week. Since then, the intensity has dropped, but the lights continue to show up on a regular basis. Naturally, the first thing people thought of was UFOs. The behaviour of these lights closely mirrored classic descriptions of unidentified flying objects. However, scientists decided to approach the problem systematically. Since 1983, the scientific project Hessdalen has been active in the valley. Researchers from various countries installed radars, cameras, spectrometers, and other equipment to capture and study the enigmatic lights, and they succeeded compiling a massive amount of data. So, what did they discover? First, the lights are indeed a real physical object. They reflect radar beams. Second, they are not known aircraft such as planes or helicopters. Third, their chemical composition remains undetermined. Spectral analysis has not provided a clear answer. So what exactly are these things? There are several leading hypotheses. One of the most popular is the plasma theory. Perhaps the Hessdalen lights are simply blobs of ionized gas that form in the atmosphere under specific conditions. But what provides the tremendous energy required to create and sustain this plasma? That question remains unanswered. Another idea, the geological theory, links the lights directly to the valley's unique features. One side of the valley is rich in copper, while the other holds zinc and iron. The river flowing through the floor contains sulfur. It's possible the entire valley acts like a giant natural battery. Electrical fields generated underground could ionize the air and produce the glow. While this theory is intriguing, it fails to explain the light's rapid movement and complex, interacting behavior. There is also a third, more exotic hypothesis. This one suggests the lights are a form of energy resulting from the piezoelectric effect. When the valley's rocks are put under pressure, they generate an electrical charge that manifests as visible light. This version might account for the appearance of the lights, but not their distinct shapes or movements. The Hessdalen lights represent a true natural laboratory, giving scientists a live opportunity to observe a phenomenon that fundamentally challenges our current understanding of atmospheric physics. They are unlike ball lightning or the aurora borealis. This is something entirely different. Every year, students and scientists journey to Hessdalen, hoping to get closer to the solution. But for now, the valley remains reluctant to give up its secrets, continuing to stage its mysterious light shows for those who watch. Moving away from localized phenomena, let's turn our attention to something truly planetary in scale, a spectacle witnessed in only a handful of places on Earth. The morning glory clouds. Picture an early morning in northern Australia. The sky is crystal clear. Then, on the horizon, a gigantic, perfectly uniform cloud roll appears, moving across the sky like a massive wave. This cylindrical formation can stretch for up to 1,000 kilometers long and 2 kilometers high. It travels at a steady speed of about 60 kilometers per hour. It is an incredible and captivating sight that draws glider pilots from around the globe. But what exactly is it? And how does it form? Scientists still haven't settled on a definitive answer. The morning glory is a type of roll cloud, technically known as an Arcus cloud. Unlike typical roll clouds, which often precede a thunderstorm, these distinctive tubes can consist of multiple parallel waves and often appear when the surrounding sky is completely clear. The leading theory links their formation to the collision of air masses. On Australia's Cape York Peninsula, sea breezes blow inland from two directions, from the west and the east. By late afternoon, these two air masses collide over the centre of the peninsula. This collision generates an atmospheric wave that begins to move southwest. Overnight, as the air above the land cools, while the air over the sea remains warm and moist, a temperature inversion layer forms. A blanket of warm air sits above the cooler air near the surface. When the nighttime wave reaches this stable layer, it forces the moist marine air below it to rise. As this air lifts, it cools, and the water vapour condenses, forming a visible cloud along the crest of the wave. At the front edge of the cloud, air continues to rise, while at the back, it sinks. This cyclic motion makes the cloud appear to roll forward, constantly maintaining its shape. This model successfully explains the main characteristics of the phenomenon. However, the model is incomplete. For instance, why does the morning glory appear so regularly in this specific region of Australia, the Gulf of Carpentaria, yet so rarely anywhere else in the world? What additional factors, beyond the collision of sea breezes, are necessary for its formation? Furthermore, the theory doesn't account for why, sometimes, instead of a single roll, an entire series of 10 or more parallel cloud bands appear. Some researchers suggest that larger-scale atmospheric processes occurring at higher altitudes may also be involved in the creation of these clouds. They might be a manifestation of atmospheric gravity waves, analogous to ripples on the surface of water. The morning glory is a superb example of how complex atmospheric interactions can give rise to such organised and gigantic structures. Studying these clouds is vital not only for meteorology. Understanding such phenomena helps us better forecast weather and comprehend atmospheric dynamics as a whole, and for pilots and photographers, it remains one of the most beautiful and mesmerising natural wonders, definitely worth waking up before dawn to see. Let's dive into something truly bizarre, a substance that sounds like it was ripped straight from medieval folklore, yet continues to baffle observers today. I'm talking about star jelly, sometimes called astral gel. Imagine this. After a meteor shower, you find a strange, translucent, gelatinous mass on the ground, resembling jelly. It's often odourless, and, crucially, it evaporates entirely shortly after discovery, leaving no trace behind. References to this mystery substance span centuries. Historically, people linked it to celestial events, believing it was either an extraterrestrial life form or some kind of condensed cosmic material. Reports of star jelly continue to surface worldwide, from Scotland to Texas. So what exactly is it? Science has faced a massive challenge trying to study this phenomenon because the substance vanishes too quickly. By the time researchers can transport a sample to a lab, it has often either evaporated completely or decomposed beyond recognition. Only a handful of times have scientists successfully analysed samples, and the results were highly unexpected. One analysis revealed the jelly contained the DNA of frogs and toads. This led to the so-called amphibian hypothesis. This theory suggests that star jelly is nothing more than frog or toad spawn or eggs that have been regurgitated by predatory birds such as herons. These gelatinous egg sacs then rapidly absorb atmospheric moisture and swell into the huge, mysterious masses found on the ground. This theory successfully explains the amphibian DNA and why the substance is often found near water. However, it fails to account for all sightings, especially why the jelly is sometimes discovered in places far removed from heron habitats or frog populations, and why witnesses consistently connect its appearance to meteor showers. Another competing hypothesis proposes that star jelly is actually a biological byproduct of certain fungi or cyanobacteria, specifically blue-green algae like nostoc. When conditions are right, usually high humidity, These organisms can rapidly swell into large gel-like colonies that perfectly mimic the description of star jelly. This version is certainly plausible, but once again, it doesn't explain the persistent correlation observers make with celestial events. There is a third, more exotic theory. Some scientists have suggested that the substance might be atmospheric polymers formed high in the sky by electrical discharges or other factors, which then precipitate down to Earth, often with rain. This could potentially explain the sudden appearance and rapid evaporation. However, no definitive trace of these specific polymers has ever been found in the atmosphere. The mystery of star jelly is a classic problem in cryptobiology and chemistry. We have numerous eyewitness reports, but virtually no lasting material for study. It is highly likely that several entirely different phenomena are being grouped under the same folkloric name. In some cases, it might be regurgitated frog spawn. In others, algal colonies. And perhaps, in others, something we don't yet understand. This elusive, gelatinous substance remains firmly on the border between folklore and hard science, reminding us that even the ground beneath our feet can yield baffling mysteries. Let's shift our focus back to geology and seismology, specifically to a phenomenon that often accompanies earthquakes and looks like something straight out of an apocalyptic light show. Earthquake lights, or EQLs. Imagine this. Seconds or minutes before a major tremor strikes, or sometimes right during the quake, the sky suddenly lights up. These flashes can resemble lightning, yet they don't originate from the clouds. They seem to shoot up directly from the ground. The lights take on various forms, glowing spheres, pillars of light, or even a steady luminescence, similar to the aurora borealis. Their colour palette ranges from white and blue all the way to red. These lights have been documented throughout human history. However, for a long time, geologists dismissed them as the mere product of frightened eyewitnesses' imaginations, or just coincidences involving regular thunderstorms. But with the proliferation of surveillance cameras and smartphones, the number of documented cases has skyrocketed. Science now has undeniable proof. Earthquake lights are real. But what causes them? This remains one of the most perplexing questions in modern seismology. Currently, no single unified theory can explain every documented instance. Instead, there are several competing hypotheses. The first, and arguably the most popular, is the piezoelectric effect, a concept we previously discussed in relation to the Hessdalen lights. Certain rocks, like quartz, can generate an electrical charge when compressed and deformed. During an earthquake, the colossal pressure and friction along a fault line can generate immense electrical fields. These fields surge to the surface, ionizing the air and causing the visible glow. This theory successfully explains why the lights often appear directly over active fault lines. However, it doesn't account for the wide variety of shapes and colours, or why they don't accompany every single earthquake. The second major hypothesis involves what scientists call positive holes, or P-holes. According to this idea, intense stress in the rock causes chemical bonds to break, creating charge carriers known as positive holes. These charges can flow rapidly through the rock to the surface, where they exit into the atmosphere and ionize the air. This model, pioneered by physicist Friedemann Freund, helps explain not only the illumination, but also some other earthquake precursors, such as strange animal behavior. The third theory suggests that friction is the source of the light. Rapid movement of rock along the fault can generate localized heat reaching thousands of degrees, causing materials to vaporize and glow. However, this hypothesis struggles to explain how light could penetrate the surface, passing through kilometers of overlying rock. Studying earthquake lights goes far beyond mere scientific curiosity. If researchers can truly understand the mechanism behind their creation, it might pave the way for a crucial early warning system for earthquakes. If the lights consistently precede a major tremor, detecting them could give people precious seconds, or perhaps even minutes, to take cover in a safe location. For now, these ghostly, shimmering lights remain a formidable and mysterious companion to one of nature's most destructive forces. Now, let's step beyond our planet, beyond our galaxy, to confront one of the greatest enigmas of modern cosmology, the Great Attractor. Picture a map of the universe. You see galaxies, clusters of galaxies and superclusters, all in motion. Our own Milky Way, along with neighbouring Andromeda and the entire local group of galaxies, is hurtling through space at a staggering speed, roughly 2 million kilometres per hour. But where exactly are we going? For a long time, this motion was attributed merely to the general expansion of the universe following the Big Bang. However, in the 1970s, astronomers noticed something strange. Our local galactic group isn't moving quite as predicted. There was an anomaly, a measurable additional acceleration directed towards a single point in the constellation Norma. It was as if, 250 million light-years away, there existed something of colossal mass, an unseen gravitational centre pulling everything toward it, including our Milky Way. This something was christened the Great Attractor. What could this massive force be? The first assumption was a gigantic supercluster of galaxies, but when astronomers pointed their telescopes toward the suspected location, they ran straight into a problem. This region of the sky is almost completely blocked by the plane of our own galaxy, the Milky Way. The dust and stars create a vast curtain, blocking our view of what lies beyond. This frustrating region is aptly named the Zone of Avoidance. Nevertheless, by utilising radio and X-ray telescopes, which can effectively pierce through the dust, scientists did manage to detect a large concentration of galaxies in that direction, known as the Norma cluster. Pause. However, calculations quickly revealed a critical flaw. Its mass wasn't nearly enough. The Norma cluster only accounted for about half of the required gravitational pull. This meant something far more massive had to be involved. Then, in 2016, a key discovery was made. Located even further back behind the Great Attractor was an even more colossal structure, the Shapley supercluster, a massive concentration of thousands of galaxies. It certainly contributes to our overall motion. Yet even when factoring in the Shapley supercluster, the physics still doesn't completely add up. There remains a dark component to our acceleration, an unexplained deficit in the gravitational equation. This shortfall has fueled bold hypotheses. Could the Great Attractor be something more exotic than just a cluster of visible galaxies? Perhaps it's a gargantuan concentration of dark matter, the mysterious substance that makes up most of the universe's mass, but doesn't emit or reflect light. Or maybe it's evidence of a new, unknown physics of gravity, operating differently on these colossal scales. The Great Attractor isn't merely a cosmic anomaly, it points to the limits of our current knowledge. We are hurtling towards something grand and incomprehensible, a journey that will take billions of years. But this enigma is already driving astronomy forward, forcing us to build new telescopes and develop new theories, hoping one day we can peer behind the veil of the Milky Way and finally understand what truly pulls us. Moving from a gravitational puzzle to an informational one, we turn our attention to the most famous and intriguing signal in the history of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. On August 15th, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University, dedicated to scanning the skies for extraterrestrial signals, registered something truly extraordinary. It captured an extremely powerful, narrow-band radio pulse that lasted exactly 72 seconds. When astronomer Jerry Eman reviewed the data printouts a few days later, he was so astonished that he circled the corresponding sequence of symbols with a red pen and scribbled "Wow" in the margin. And that's how the signal earned its legendary name. But what made this signal so unique? First, its sheer power. It was 30 times stronger than the background noise of space. Second, the frequency. It was recorded at 1420 megahertz, the so-called hydrogen line, the most common frequency in the universe. Many scientists believe that if an intelligent civilization wanted to broadcast a message, they would choose this exact frequency as a universal beacon for an interstellar meeting place. Third, its profile. The signal increased in intensity as the telescope passed over its source, and then gradually faded away. This profile perfectly matched what an astronomer would expect from a distant source traversing the telescope's field of view. All these factors made it the perfect candidate for an artificial extraterrestrial signal. Scientists immediately pointed Big Ear and other telescopes toward that exact spot in the constellation Sagittarius. But it was all in vain. The signal never repeated. In over 40 years, no one has managed to capture it again. This is the core mystery. If this was an attempt at contact, why was it so brief and singular? Of course, attempts have been made to find a natural explanation. Could it have been an Earth-orbiting satellite? Highly unlikely. The 1020 MHz frequency is reserved exclusively for astronomical use, and terrestrial transmitters are forbidden there. Perhaps it was a reflection of an Earth signal bouncing off space debris? Also doubtful, as that doesn't account for the signal's unique profile and power. In 2017, a new hypothesis emerged. Astronomer Antonio Paris suggested the source might have been a hydrogen cloud surrounding a comet. 2 comets were indeed passing through that region of the sky when the WOW signal was detected. However, this theory was heavily criticized by the scientific community. Other astronomers pointed out that comets cannot produce such a powerful, narrowband signal. They emit across a broad range, not on one specific frequency. Thus, the WOW signal remains unexplained to this day. It stands alone in the history of the SETI program. It represents the only time we might have heard a voice in the great cosmic silence. Was it truly a signal from intelligent life? Or was it some incredibly rare, unique natural phenomenon that we simply don't yet understand? Or perhaps just an improbable fluctuation, a fluke that will never happen again. Until we find the answer, that red inscription of WOW on an old printout will remain the symbol of humanity's greatest dream and its greatest mystery. Leaving the mysteries of space behind, let's pivot to one of the grisliest and most controversial enigmas associated with the human body: spontaneous human combustion. Imagine a scene repeatedly documented in police reports. Investigators find a pile of ash, sometimes with an oddly preserved limb, perhaps a pair of feet still wearing shoes. Crucially, the rest of the room, including highly flammable materials like newspapers or curtains, remains almost entirely untouched by fire. It looks as if the body incinerated from the inside out, generating an incredibly high yet perfectly localized temperature. This is the classic signature of spontaneous human combustion. Historically, about 200 such cases have been documented, often involving elderly individuals who lived isolated lives. So what could possibly cause such a horrific event? Science naturally is extremely skeptical of the idea that a human can suddenly burst into flames without an external ignition source. It simply violates the laws of physics and biology. The human body lacks any known internal mechanism that could initiate such a process. This is why scientists and forensic experts look for more prosaic explanations. The leading scientific theory used to explain these cases is called the wick effect. According to this model, it all starts with an ordinary source of ignition. Perhaps the victim fell asleep with a cigarette or a candle tipped over. The clothing catches fire and the flames melt the subcutaneous fat beneath the skin. And this fat saturates the clothing, turning it into a makeshift wick, much like a candle. The body fat burns slowly but intensely at a very high temperature, yet with a relatively small flame. This slow, contained burning, which can last for hours, is capable of fully incinerating the torso, where most of the body fat is concentrated without spreading to nearby objects. The unburned extremities are explained by their lower fat content. This theory is highly logical and has been backed up by experiments on animal carcasses, explaining the vast majority of known incidents. However, certain details still puzzle proponents of the SHC idea. For instance, why is there sometimes absolutely no external source of ignition found? How do we account for the incredibly high temperatures needed to completely consume the bones? Temperatures normally achieved only in crematories. And why is the fire so perfectly localized, refusing to spread? There are other, more exotic hypotheses. Some researchers have suggested the cause could be the buildup of methane in the body, which is then ignited by static electricity. Others point to ball lightning. There are even theories involving geomagnetic fields or unknown biochemical reactions, but none of these hypotheses have substantial evidence. Most scientists today agree that spontaneous human combustion, as a separate phenomenon, does not exist, and all cases can be explained by the wick effect, combined with negligence and specific environmental conditions. Nevertheless, this phenomenon is firmly embedded in popular culture and continues to fuel the imagination. It remains a grim reminder of how the human body, which is mostly water, can, under specific and tragic circumstances, essentially become its own fuel. Let's now transport ourselves to Siberia, to the early 20th century, to delve into the mystery of one of the most powerful blasts in human history. On June 30th, 1908, near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River, an event of colossal magnitude unfolded. The blast flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of forest, an area comparable to modern-day Moscow. The resulting shockwaves circled the globe twice. For several nights across Asia and Europe, the sky exhibited an anomalous glow and strange noctilucent clouds. The explosive power is estimated to be in the tens of megatons, 1,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. But here is the biggest surprise: no impact crater or meteorite fragments were ever recovered from the site. This immediately gave birth to the central question: what exactly caused the Tunguska event? The first and foremost explanation is the impact of a cosmic body, either a meteorite or a comet. This hypothesis suggests the object entered the atmosphere and exploded several kilometers above the surface, never reaching the ground. This scenario accounts for the vast devastation and, crucially, the lack of an impact crater. The trees were flattened in a radial pattern, confirming an airburst. If the culprit was a comet largely made of ice and frozen gases, it would have completely vaporized in the explosion, leaving zero trace material. If it was a stony asteroid, fragments should have been scattered, yet extensive searches have proven unsuccessful. Microscopic spherules with high iridium and nickel content, typical of meteorites, have been found in the peat bogs near the blast site, but this evidence is insufficient for final confirmation. This ambiguity has fueled countless alternative, sometimes highly speculative theories. One is a natural gas explosion. Supposedly, a giant bubble of methane erupted from the ground and detonated in the atmosphere. However, geologists have found no evidence of large gas deposits in the region. Another version suggests the Earth collided with a miniature black hole or a clump of antimatter. While such hypotheses explain the lack of debris, they are not supported by any scientific data and remain purely speculative. Even more exotic ideas exist, such as the crash of an alien spacecraft or the remote testing of a death ray by Nikola Tesla. These theories are popular in mass culture, but entirely lack scientific basis. Today, most scientists lean toward the meteorite or comet theory. The Tunguska event is now considered the textbook example of the danger posed by cosmic objects, but the case has never been definitively closed. We still don't know exactly what it was, a comet or an asteroid, or what its precise size and composition were. The absence of direct evidence leaves ample room for debate and further research. The Tunguska phenomenon is a stark reminder that space can strike at any moment, and that even the most monumental events can leave behind only a mystery, a stretch of flattened trees, and the memory of glowing nights. Let's dive back underwater, this time into the Baltic Sea, home to an object lying on the seabed that sparks controversy and fuels countless conspiracy theories. Back in 2011, a Swedish oceanographic team called Ocean X, while searching for shipwrecks using sonar, detected something peculiar on the floor of the Botnian Gulf. Lying at a depth of about 90 meters was a perfectly circular object, roughly 60 meters in diameter. It resembled a giant mushroom, or, as journalists immediately nicknamed it, the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Sonar images revealed a long, straight furrow extending from the object, suggesting it had skidded across the seabed before coming to a rest. This formation became known as the Baltic Sea Anomaly. So what exactly is it? Initial speculations range from the highly fantastic, a sunken UFO, a secret Cold War weapon, or even part of an ancient submerged city. The Ocean X team organised an expedition using divers to investigate the object. Their subsequent reports only deepened the mystery. They claimed the object was made of stone, but possessed unnaturally smooth, almost machined edges and right angles. On its surface, they reported strange circular holes and something that looked like a staircase. Furthermore, they claimed that whenever their vessel was directly above the object, all electronic equipment, including satellite phones and cameras, would malfunction. As soon as they moved a short distance away, everything began working again. This fueled a wave of speculation about a mysterious energy field surrounding the anomaly. Scientists, however, treated these claims with considerable skepticism. Geologists from Stockholm University analysed a small sample they managed to retrieve from the seabed. They concluded it was ordinary basalt, a volcanic rock common to the region. They proposed that the Baltic Sea anomaly is simply a geological formation left over from the Ice Age. Moving glacial ice sheets could have ground and sculpted the rock, giving it its bizarre, symmetrical shape. The furrow on the seabed would simply be the track left behind as the glacier dragged the heavy stone. This theory neatly explains the object's shape and composition, but it fails to account for the alleged electromagnetic interference and other strange details the initial discoverers reported. Critics of the Ocean X team argue that they deliberately sensationalized the findings to attract funding for future expeditions, suggesting the stories about equipment failure were fabrications. On the other hand, the sonar images certainly look intriguing, and even skeptical geologists concede that it is a highly unusual rock formation. So, what exactly rests on the floor of the Baltic Sea? A unique natural creation sculpted by a glacier thousands of years ago? Or something else entirely that defies current explanation? Without a new, fully independent and well-equipped scientific expedition to conduct a detailed study, the Baltic Sea anomaly will likely remain an underwater enigma, a source of conflict between daring adventurers and strict academics. Let's travel to the arid grasslands of Namibia, home to one of nature's most beautiful and baffling patterns, the fairy circles. Picture vast stretches of land dotted with thousands of perfectly circular, barren patches, each framed by a vibrant ring of tall grass. Ranging from 2 to 15 metres in diameter, they look like a gigantic polka-dot fabric when viewed from above. The local Himba people believe these circles are the footprints of gods, or perhaps the creation of a subterranean dragon whose poisonous breath kills the vegetation. For decades, scientists have pursued a more rational explanation, and the debate continues fiercely to this day. Currently, there are two major competing theories. The first is the termite theory, proposed by biologist Norbert Jürgens. He hypothesized that the circles are created by sand termites of the species Psamatherms olosarus. Jürgens believes the termites consume the grass roots in the center of the patch, thereby creating a subterranean water reservoir. Rainwater, unable to soak into the bare soil, quickly seeps down, allowing the termites to survive the dry season. The resulting ring of high grass around the edge is a result of their activity enriching the soil. In support of his theory, Jürgens found these termites in the majority of the circles he investigated. This theory is elegant and logical, but it has weak spots. Other researchers studying the circles have not always found termites present. Furthermore, similar circles were recently discovered in Australia, where this particular species of termite does not exist. This casts doubt on the universality of the termite hypothesis. The second theory is plant self-organization. Proponents of this idea believe the circles arise from fierce competition among plants for water in an arid environment. The plants essentially push each other away, extracting all the available moisture within the radius of their roots. Computer modelling showed that under specific conditions, this competition can indeed lead to the formation of precisely these patterns, regular, circular gaps. The strongest grasses survive, forming the outer ring, while the centre remains bare because there is simply no moisture left for weaker sprouts. This theory is also highly compelling and could explain the appearance of circles in both Africa and Australia. But it isn't perfect either. It struggles to explain the perfectly circular shape of the patches and their remarkably uniform distribution across the landscape. Lately, some scientists suggest that the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. Perhaps both mechanisms work in tandem. Plants initiate the competition for water, creating the initial gaps, and then the termites move in to perfect the circle's shape and maintain its existence. Namibia's fairy circles are a stunning example of how complex ecosystems can generate striking order from chaos, a mystery existing at the intersection of botany, entomology, hydrology, and mathematics. And while scientists continue to debate, these cryptic patterns keep appearing in the desert, silently reminding us of the hidden laws that govern life. This is another light mystery, this time from North America, the Chihuahuan Desert in Texas. Here, near the small town of Marfa, there is a phenomenon known simply as the Marfa Lights. Imagine a dark, moonless desert night. You stand at a dedicated viewing platform, gazing toward the horizon, when suddenly, glowing spheres appear in the distance. These lights, sometimes described as being the size of a basketball, hover just above the ground. They flicker, often changing colour from white to yellow, red, or blue. Their movements are erratic, sometimes gliding slowly, sometimes darting around at incredible speeds, merging together or splitting apart. Crucially, they are completely silent. These lights have been reported here for over 130 years. The first documented accounts date back to the late 19th century. Cowboys, local residents, tourists, thousands of people have witnessed this mysterious illumination. So, what exactly are they? Naturally, as with the Hessdalen lights, initial thoughts jump to UFOs or ghosts. However, scientists and skeptics have offered several more down-to-earth explanations. The most popular and simplest theory involves car headlights. Highway 67 runs roughly in the direction where the lights appear. Due to the undulating terrain and thermal inversions common in the desert air, light from the headlights can refract and distort, making the source appear like floating spheres. Students from the University of Texas conducted a study demonstrating that the majority of observed lights align temporally and spatially with vehicle traffic on that highway. While this theory accounts for many sightings, it doesn't explain everything. Eyewitnesses claim they saw the lights long before automobiles were common in the area. Furthermore, some observers have reported the lights appearing very close to them, clearly not resembling distant headlights. And the complex behaviour, the rapid movement and splitting, is difficult to attribute solely to light refraction. This led to a second geological hypothesis. Similar to earthquake lights, it's proposed that tectonic stress in the rocks beneath the desert might generate a piezoelectric effect. The released electrical charges could ionize the air, creating glowing plasma spheres. This theory offers a better explanation for the light's more complex behaviour. A third version suggests swamp gas. It posits that the decomposition of organic material underground could release methane and phosphine, which ignite spontaneously upon contact with the air, creating transient will-o'-the-wisps. However, geologists have not found significant organic deposits in the area capable of sustaining such a regular phenomenon. The real mystery of the Marfa lights lies in the probability that the name covers several different phenomena. Some are undeniably car headlights, others are likely atmospheric mirages, but it remains possible that a portion of the sightings are manifestations of a geological or atmospheric process we don't yet fully understand. The dedicated viewing platform along the highway continues to attract tourists, each hoping to witness not just the glare of headlights, but a genuine desert marvel that still defies a final single explanation. Let's leave the desert behind and travel to the tropical island of Barbados, the setting for one of the strangest and most unsettling crypt mysteries, the famous moving coffins of the Chase Vault. Picture a massive stone vault partially buried underground. The entrance is sealed by a heavy marble slab. Inside lay several huge lead-lined coffins, each weighing hundreds of pounds. But every time the crypt was opened for a new burial, the workers found utter chaos. The coffins had been violently moved, shoved out of position, flipped over, and sometimes even stood upright, leaning against the walls. Yet, the heavy slab at the entrance was always perfectly in place with no signs of tampering or forced entry. This strange saga began in 1812. The vault belonged to the wealthy Chase family. Every time a death occurred and the crypt was accessed, the bizarre scene repeated itself. The enormous, heavy coffins were tossed around like children's toys. The only exception was one small wooden coffin belonging to a child, which always remained untouched. This pattern persisted for several years. News of the strange phenomenon swept across the island, eventually reaching the ears of the governor of Barbados, Lord Combermere, who decided he needed to investigate personally. In 1819, after the next burial, he ordered the vault to be meticulously searched. Then he had the entire floor covered with a fine layer of sand to capture any potential footprints or disturbance. The entrance was then sealed not only by the marble slab, but also with cement, and finally secured with the governor's personal seal. Less than a year later, reports surfaced of strange sounds coming from the crypt. The governor commanded it be opened. The seals were perfectly intact. They struggled to move the heavy slab. And what did they find inside? Complete disarray once more. The coffins were scattered, but the sand covering the floor held not a single trace. No human footprint, no drag marks, nothing. It was absolutely inexplicable. Following this incident, it was decided to remove all the coffins from the supposedly cursed vault and re-inter them elsewhere in the cemetery. Since then, the Chase vault has stood empty, and nothing strange has ever happened inside again. What possible explanations exist for this phenomenon? Naturally, theories immediately sprang up involving ghosts, curses, and poltergeists. But let's examine the rational hypotheses. One suggests flooding. Perhaps water seeped into the vault during heavy rains. The lead-lined coffins, being airtight, could have floated like boats, and then, as the water receded, settled back down in random positions. This theory accounts for the movement, but it faces serious problems. Firstly, no traces of water or dampness were ever found when the vault was opened. Secondly, how could water move the massive coffins without damaging the governor's seal or leaving any marks in the sand? Another theory points to seismic activity, meaning minor earthquakes. Underground tremors might have caused the heavy coffins to slide and shift. Barbados is located in a seismically active zone, after all. However, this version also doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Earthquakes strong enough to move those massive lead boxes should have damaged other nearby crypts in the cemetery, but there was no such damage reported. Furthermore, tremors are highly unlikely to set a huge coffin standing upright. The mystery of the moving coffins remains unsolved. It is one of those historical enigmas we can no longer verify. All we have left are eyewitness testimonies and historical documents. Was this a massive hoax, or did something genuinely inexplicable, something beyond our comprehension, actually happen on the island of Barbados? Moving on from the eerie secrets of the crypt, let's turn our attention to a beautiful and fleeting optical phenomenon often observed at sea, the green ray. This is the green ray. Many have probably heard about it from Jules Verne's novels, or maybe even the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But this isn't fiction. It's a real, verified phenomenon. Picture this. You're standing on the shore, watching the sunset. The sun slowly sinks below the horizon. And then, at that absolute final moment, just as the last sliver of the solar disk vanishes from view, a brilliant emerald green flash or spot of light flares above the horizon for 1 or 2 seconds. That is the green ray. Witnessing it is considered extremely lucky, as it requires very specific conditions: exceptionally clean and clear air and an unobstructed horizon, usually over the sea or in a desert. So, what causes it? Unlike many other phenomena on our list, the green ray has a solid scientific explanation rooted in atmospheric physics. However, some fine details of the mechanism remain subjects of ongoing study. It all comes down to refraction, the bending of light as it passes through the atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere acts like a gigantic prism. When sunlight, which is actually a composite of all the rainbow colours, travels through this medium, it gets split into its spectrum. blue and green light rays are refracted, bent, more strongly than red and orange rays. When the sun is high in the sky, all these colours mix and we perceive white light. But when the sun is near the horizon, its rays must travel through a significantly thicker layer of atmosphere, making the refraction much more noticeable. The result is that we effectively see several superimposed images of the sun, each slightly shifted and in a different colour. The upper edge of the solar disk appears blue-green, while the lower edge looks red. As long as the sun is above the horizon, all these colours are too bright and blend together. But the instant the main, red and yellow parts of the disk drop below the horizon for a fraction of a second, we can glimpse only the very last topmost green sliver. Why green though? Why not blue or violet, since they are refracted even more? This is because blue and violet light rays are scattered intensely by air molecules, the very same effect that makes our sky blue. By the time the light from the setting sun reaches our eyes, almost all the blue and violet components have been scattered away. Therefore, the last remaining visible colour is green. In extremely rare instances with truly perfect atmospheric clarity, a blue ray has been observed, but that is highly exceptional. Although the basic mechanism is clear, scientists continue to study the finer details, such as how atmospheric temperature inversions, ocean conditions, and other factors influence the ray's shape and brightness. The green ray is a beautiful example of how familiar laws of physics can create a momentary, almost magical spectacle. It's a reminder that beauty and mystery often hide in the details, in those fleeting fractions of a second when the world reveals itself to us in its true colour-separated form. We've discussed the Taos hum before, but it's far from unique. Localised hums exist all over the world, tormenting residents and baffling scientists alike. One of the most famous examples is the Bristol hum in England. The story mirrors that of Taos. Starting in the 1970s, hundreds of Bristol residents began reporting a persistent, low-frequency humming sound. They describe it as sounding like a distant diesel engine idling, heard primarily indoors, and most often at night. And just like the Taos phenomenon, only a small fraction of the population can actually hear it. The hum became such a serious issue that local authorities launched multiple formal investigations. Scientists and engineers scoured the entire city searching for the source. They checked factories, traffic systems, ventilation equipment and power lines. Several theories were proposed. One linked the hum to vehicle movement over the River Avon Bridge. Another blamed large industrial fans operating at a local factory. For a time, it seemed the source had been identified. After the factory upgraded its equipment, the number of complaints did drop significantly. But the noise didn't vanish entirely. The hum continued to plague certain residents, forcing researchers to dig deeper. A new theory emerged pointing toward high-pressure gas pipelines. The suggestion was that the vibration of gas moving through subterranean pipes creates a low-frequency sound. This sound propagates through the ground and is amplified inside buildings that happen to resonate with that specific frequency. Another, more complex hypothesis connects the Bristol hum directly to the ocean. Bristol is located near the coast, and some oceanographers have suggested the sound might be generated by long ocean waves interacting with one another. This interaction could create infrasound oscillations that then travel hundreds of miles inland. This theory provides an explanation for why the hum might intensify under specific weather conditions. Just as with the Taos hum, there's also a medical hypothesis involving collective tinnitus or other hearing disorders. However, this fails to explain why the hearers are concentrated in very specific geographic areas. The mystery of the Bristol hum and other similar phenomena lies in its multifaceted nature. It likely doesn't have a single unified source. Instead, it might be the result of a complex interplay of several factors: industrial noise, geological peculiarities, atmospheric conditions, and even individual human sensitivity. Each factor contributes, creating a unique acoustic background that for some becomes intrusive and agonizing. These hums pose a challenge not just for physicists and engineers, but for psychologists and doctors too. They force us to contemplate the limits of human perception and how our environment, even at a level invisible and inaudible to most, can profoundly affect our lives. Let's turn our attention back to the stars, specifically to the object that, back in 2015, had astronomers buzzing seriously about alien megastructures. We are talking about the star KIC 8462852, much better known as Tabby's star. This star is located in the Cygnus constellation, nearly 1,500 light-years away from Earth. It first captured scientific attention thanks to data gathered by the Kepler Space Telescope. Kepler was designed to search for exoplanets by tracking the slightest changes in a star's brightness. When a planet crosses in front of its star, it blocks a fraction of the light, causing a small, regular dip in luminosity, usually amounting to less than 1%. But Tabby's star behaved completely differently. The telescope recorded dozens of irregular, chaotic drops in its brightness. Crucially, these dips were incredibly deep, up to 22%. This suggested that something enormous, perhaps half the size of the star itself, was periodically obscuring it from our view. What could this massive object be? The initial thought was a swarm of comets. Perhaps a gigantic cloud composed of thousands of comets was orbiting the star, and their passing caused these strange dimmings. This remained the leading hypothesis for a while, as it successfully explained the irregularity and the odd shape of the light curve. However, the comet theory had a critical flaw. To cause such a dramatic drop in brightness, the sheer volume of comets would have to be immense. Such a dense cloud would generate vast amounts of dust, which, when heated by the star, should emit strongly in the infrared spectrum. But infrared telescope observations showed no significant excess of this radiation. That is when the most thrilling and speculative hypothesis emerged. Astronomer Jason Wright suggested that we might not be observing a natural phenomenon, but an artificial structure, a so-called Dyson sphere, or fragments of one. This is a hypothetical megastructure that a highly advanced civilization could build around its star to harness all its energy. Such a structure would certainly cause the deep and irregular dimmings observed. This idea, of course, exploded across the internet and brought immense global attention to the star. The SETI project even pointed its massive radio telescopes at Tabby's star in search of artificial signals, though they found nothing. Scientists continue to search for more natural explanations. Theories have since been proposed suggesting the phenomena could be a massive dust cloud left over from a planetary collision, or that the star has an unseen companion surrounded by a dense disk of material. Another version points to internal processes within the star itself. Perhaps it is currently going through an unstable phase of its evolution, with internal dynamics causing changes in its overall brightness. Yet to date, none of these theories can completely account for all the observed strange behaviour. Tabby's star remains one of the most enigmatic objects in our sky, while its secret is most likely not tied to aliens, but rather to some new, unknown astrophysical phenomenon. Until that mystery is solved, it will continue to capture our imagination, reminding us that the universe is probably far stranger and more surprising than we ever thought possible. Moving from cosmic megastructures, let's zoom in on a mystery hidden within us, within our very minds and bodies. That mystery is the placebo effect. We've all heard the term. It's the phenomenon where a person improves after taking a dummy treatment, a sugar pill, a saline injection, or even a sham surgery, simply because they believe they are receiving real medicine. The placebo effect is not some made-up story. It is a genuine, powerful, and measurable psychobiological phenomenon. It is so potent that when testing any new drug, researchers must compare it against a placebo just to prove the medication actually works, rather than just triggering the belief in a cure. But how does this actually work? That's where the real mystery begins. For a long time, the placebo was dismissed as purely psychological, just self-suggestion. However, modern research utilizing brain scans shows the process is far more complex. When a person takes a placebo, believing it's a painkiller, their brain activates the same areas responsible for producing natural opioids, endorphins. In essence, The brain manufactures its own painkillers. The expectation of healing triggers genuine biochemical processes in the body, and it doesn't stop with pain relief. The placebo effect can influence the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, depression, allergies, and many other ailments. For instance, in Parkinson's patients, taking a placebo can trigger the release of dopamine in the brain, the exact neurotransmitter these patients lack. How does the brain know precisely which chemical it needs to manufacture? Even more mysterious is the flip side of this phenomenon, the nocebo effect. This is when negative expectations trigger real, adverse symptoms. If you tell someone that a dummy pill might cause a headache, chances are high they will actually experience one. This powerfully demonstrates just how much our thoughts and beliefs can dictate our physical state. Scientists still don't fully understand the underlying mechanisms of the placebo effect. What is clear is that it involves complex connections between the cerebral cortex, which handles our expectations and belief, and older brain structures that regulate our body's biochemistry. Studying the placebo effect is more than mere academic curiosity. If we understood how to activate and control it, we could potentially harness our body's internal resources to treat illnesses, reducing our reliance on external medication. That could truly revolutionize medicine. The placebo effect offers powerful evidence of the inseparable link between mind and body. It demonstrates that our consciousness is not just a passive observer, but an active participant in managing our health. And this internal pharmacy, hidden within our own brains, remains one of medicine's greatest unsolved puzzles. Let's shift our focus from the mysteries of the mind back to the mysteries of the cosmos. We face a question that sounds incredibly simple, yet remains unanswered. If the universe is so vast and so full of stars, why haven't we found any definitive signs of extraterrestrial life? This profound question is known as the Fermi paradox. It was first formulated by physicist Enrico Fermi in 1950 during a casual lunch conversation with his colleagues. The logic is straightforward. Our own Milky Way galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars. We now know that many of these stars host planets. Critically, some of these planets orbit within the so-called habitable zone, where conditions are suitable for liquid water, and therefore, potentially life. Even if life and intelligent civilization arose on only a tiny fraction of these worlds, given the billions of years the galaxy has existed, at least one of them should have achieved a level of development allowing for interstellar travel or the sending of clear signals. Theoretically, the entire galaxy could be colonized in just a few million years, which, cosmically speaking, is a blink of an eye. So, where is everyone? Why do we see neither their ships, nor their signals, nor any lasting evidence of their activity? This great silence of the universe is the core of the paradox. There are countless attempts to explain this silence, and they generally fall into three major categories. The first group of hypotheses suggests that we are alone, or at least that intelligent life is an incredibly rare phenomenon. Perhaps its emergence required a unique, improbable confluence of events that only occurred here on Earth. This is known as the rare Earth hypothesis. The second group posits that civilizations do exist, but we simply cannot connect with them. Perhaps they are too far away. Perhaps they employ communication technologies we cannot comprehend. Or perhaps they are intentionally hiding, following a "don't stick your head out" policy to avoid attracting the attention of more aggressive species. This chilling idea is often referred to as the dark forest hypothesis. The third, and arguably the darkest group of hypotheses, proposes the existence of a great filter. This is a monumental hurdle that prevents civilizations from reaching a high level of intergalactic development. This filter might be behind us. For example, the emergence of life or intelligence itself was the incredibly complex, unlikely step we have already passed. Or, far worse, the filter may lie ahead of us. Perhaps any civilization that reaches a critical technological threshold inevitably self-destructs, whether through nuclear warfare, unchecked AI, or environmental collapse. In this interpretation, the silence of the universe is a terrible, ominous warning. The Fermi paradox is less a scientific problem than a deep philosophical one. It forces us to contemplate our place in the cosmos, the future of humanity, and the sheer value of our fleeting existence. Until we find a single microbe on Mars or intercept one undisputed signal from deep space, this question will remain open, leaving the night sky simultaneously beautiful and terrifyingly silent. Let's dive into the two biggest mysteries in modern physics and cosmology: what the universe is truly made of. If we look at everything we can observe, the stars, planets, galaxies, ourselves, all of this ordinary or baryonic matter only accounts for about 5% of the universe's total mass and energy. So what makes up the remaining 95%? That's where we encounter two mysterious substances we know almost nothing about: dark matter and dark energy. Let's start with dark matter. It accounts for roughly 27% of the universe. We know it exists only because of its gravitational effects. In the 1930s, astronomer Fritz Zwicky, observing galaxy clusters, noticed they were spinning too fast. The visible mass of all the stars in these galaxies was entirely insufficient to hold them together gravitationally. They should have flown apart. Zwicky proposed that the clusters must contain some missing mass, or dark matter, providing the necessary extra pull. Later, astronomer Vera Rubin found the same phenomenon when studying individual galaxies. Their outer regions were rotating at the same speed as their inner parts, a direct contradiction of Newtonian laws. The only way to explain this was the presence of an invisible halo of dark matter surrounding the galaxies. So, what exactly is it? We know what dark matter is not. It's not simply dark clouds of dust or dead stars, because those would absorb light, and we don't observe that. It does not interact with light or with electromagnetic forces at all, which is why it is invisible. It interacts only through gravity. The leading hypothesis suggests that dark matter is composed of exotic elementary particles that do not fit into the standard model of physics. These are often referred to as WIMPs, or weakly interacting massive particles. Giant underground detectors are being built all over the world to try and capture these particles, but so far they have been unsuccessful. Now let's turn to dark energy. It makes up an even larger portion of the universe, about 68%. If dark matter pulls everything together, dark energy, by contrast, pushes things apart. Its existence was only discovered in the late 1990s when two teams of astronomers studying distant supernovae found that the universe was not just expanding, but expanding at an accelerating rate. This was a shocking revelation. There had to be some sort of force, some energy permeating all of space that counteracts gravity and forces galaxies to fly apart faster and faster. This energy was dubbed dark energy. We know even less about its nature than we do about dark matter. Perhaps it is a property of the vacuum itself, the so-called cosmological constant, which Einstein once introduced and later called his biggest blunder. Or perhaps it is an entirely new energy field that permeates the cosmos. Dark matter and dark energy represent two massive gaps in our map of creation. They prove that we have studied and understood only a tiny fraction of what our world is made of. Unraveling their nature will be the greatest revolution in physics since Einstein, and it might fundamentally change our entire understanding of the universe's past and future. Moving from the global mysteries of the universe, let's focus on a local, yet equally intriguing discovery made in China. The Baigong Pipes. Picture a desolate region in Qinghai province. There, inside a cave on Mount Baigongshan, two rusty pipes, roughly 40 centimeters in diameter, jut out into the solid rock. They certainly look artificial. Furthermore, many smaller pipes pierce the mountain and extend toward a nearby salt lake. Some even vanish deep beneath the lake bed. The sensation arose because the rocks encasing these pipes are estimated to be millions of years old. Who could have manufactured and installed these structures long before humans even appeared? Theories immediately emerged suggesting an alien base, or the remnants of an ancient, unknown, highly advanced civilization. Chinese state media actively publicized the find, successfully drawing tourists to this remote area. But what does science say? Analyses were performed on the material composing the pipes. A study conducted at a local smelting plant revealed they consist primarily of iron oxide, along with significant amounts of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide. 8% of the composition remained unidentified. The presence of iron and the resulting rust explain their appearance, but this doesn't answer the main question. How were they formed? Geologists offer a more prosaic, yet equally fascinating explanation. They believe the bygone pipes are not man-made structures, but rather a rare geological formation known as concretions. One theory suggests that ancient fissures in the area were filled with iron-rich sediment. Over time, this sediment petrified, forming hard tubular structures, while the softer surrounding rock eroded away, exposing them. Another, more popular geological hypothesis links the pipe formation to a process called pseudomorphism. Millions of years ago, the rock may have contained tree trunks. Eventually, the organic material decayed and was replaced by iron-rich minerals, which perfectly mimic the shape of the trunks. This process could explain the formation of these mysterious pipes, accounting for both the composition and the shape of the objects. However, proponents of an artificial origin are not deterred. They point out that the pipes have a rather regular shape and are not randomly arranged, suggesting they might form some kind of system. They also cite the unidentified 8% of the composition, speculating that it could contain elements of extraterrestrial origin. However, subsequent and more rigorous investigations have failed to confirm the presence of any exotic elements. The bygone pipes are a classic example of how an unusual natural phenomenon can be mistaken for the creation of hands, or perhaps tentacles. It is a story of how our imagination and our desire to believe in the miraculous can colour the interpretation of facts. Most likely, this is indeed a unique geological phenomenon. But until a comprehensive study is conducted to definitively confirm this version, Mount Baigongshan will remain a pilgrimage site for those who believe the history of our planet may be far stranger than what is written in the textbooks. Here's another mysterious find, this time from the bottom of the ocean, a structure so artificial looking, it's genuinely hard to believe it was created by nature. The story begins in 1964. The American research vessel El Tanin, operating in Antarctic waters, photographed the seafloor at a depth of nearly 4 kilometers. The photo revealed a strange object, a tall, straight rod topped with a structure featuring 12 equally spaced spokes. Each spoke ended in a small sphere. The whole thing bore a striking resemblance to a complex antenna. Dubbed the El Tanin antenna, the object immediately sparked intense interest and debate. Could something this perfectly symmetrical and complex possibly be natural? Ufologists and proponents of the ancient alien theory quickly claimed it was proof of extraterrestrial visitation. They speculated it was either part of a sunken alien craft or a transmitter placed on the ocean floor for communication or surveillance. This theory was incredibly popular throughout the 60s and 70s, but what did biology have to say? In 1971, oceanographers Cornelius and Bradford proposed that the El Tanin antenna wasn't an artifact at all, but a living organism. They identified it as a deep-sea carnivorous sponge, specifically Cladorhiza concrescens. These deep-sea sponges indeed possess bizarre shapes that help them snag small crustaceans. They anchor themselves to the seafloor via a stalk-like base, and their branching arms form an effective trap for prey. This explanation was highly plausible. It shifted the mystery from the realm of ufology directly into marine biology. It seemed the puzzle had been solved. However, when other biologists later studied the photograph and compared it to known sponge species, they pointed out several inconsistencies. First, the object in the photo exhibited striking symmetry, far more perfect than known samples of Cladorhiza concrescens. Second, its arms radiated out from the centre at mathematically perfect 15-degree angles. This kind of geometric precision is highly uncharacteristic of natural organisms. The debate immediately reignited. Could it be an unknown, perfectly symmetrical species of sponge? It's certainly possible, as the deep sea is teeming with undiscovered creatures. Or perhaps The initial hypothesis of artificial origin wasn't so far-fetched after all. Today, most scientists agree that the L-tannin antenna is overwhelmingly a deep-sea sponge. But because no one has ever successfully located or studied the object since 1964, all we have is that single grainy black and white photo. This scarcity of data leaves just enough room for doubt and ongoing speculation. The L-tannin antenna serves as a perfect example of how one single photograph can generate decades of debate. It's a classic case study of how nature can create structures that our human brains, constantly seeking order and patterns, perceive as something deliberate, artificial, or intelligent. Let's travel to Southeast Asia, to Thailand, specifically to the banks of the Mekong River. Here, every year at the end of October, an astonishing and beautiful phenomenon occurs: the Naga fireballs. Picture the river at night. Hundreds of people gather on the banks, waiting for a miracle. Then, from the depths of the Mekong, glowing reddish spheres begin to rise. They silently shoot out of the water, ascend several dozen meters, and then vanish. In a single night, you might witness hundreds, even thousands of these balls. This event takes place only once a year, marking the end of the Buddhist Lent, and it draws massive crowds of tourists and pilgrims. Local legends tell us that these fireballs are released by the Naga, the mythical serpent dwelling in the river, as a tribute to the Buddha. It's a truly beautiful legend. But scientists, of course, are attempting to find a logical, scientific explanation. So, what are the leading hypotheses? The first and most widely accepted scientific theory links the fireballs to swamp gas. It suggests that methane gas is formed at the bottom of the Mekong River due to the decomposition of organic matter. At a specific time of year when pressure and temperature shift, these methane bubbles break free and rise to the surface. Upon contact with atmospheric oxygen, they might spontaneously ignite, creating those glowing spheres. This theory certainly seems plausible. However, it faces serious objections. Firstly, for methane to auto-ignite in air, highly specific conditions are required, including the presence of phosphine, which is spontaneously combustible. It remains unclear why these exact conditions would occur only in one specific location and only on one specific night annually. Secondly, eyewitnesses insist that the balls emerge from the water without a splash, and they do not resemble simple burning gas. They possess a distinct shape and follow a defined trajectory. The second, more skeptical theory suggests the Naga fireballs are man-made. Some critics claim they are simply flares or tracer rounds fired from the opposite bank of the river, from Laos. This could certainly explain the event's regularity and predictability. Thai locals and authorities, however, vehemently deny this. Moreover, many observers, including scientists who have studied the phenomenon, note that the trajectory and the appearance of the glow do not resemble pyrotechnics. The balls rise straight up and leave no smoky trail. There is also a third, more exotic hypothesis, similar to those used to explain the Hessdalen lights. This theory suggests the phenomenon is a form of plasma created by geological features beneath the riverbed. Perhaps the interaction of water, minerals, and certain electrical fields generates these glowing energy spheres. However, this remains a purely speculative theory, currently lacking concrete data. The mystery of the Naga fireballs remains unsolved. Is it a rare natural event linked to the chemistry of river sediments? Is it a clever hoax maintained solely to draw in tourists? Or could it truly be something that science is not yet equipped to explain? Until we have the answers, every autumn people will continue to gather on the banks of the Mekong to witness the miracle, fireballs rising from the dark waters of the ancient river. We're heading now to Washington State, USA, where a very strange and unsettling incident took place back in 1994. This event is known as the Oakville Blobs. Picture the small town of Oakville. On August 7th, it experienced an extraordinary rain shower. Instead of water, tiny, transparent, gelatinous blobs, about the size of a grain of rice, fell from the sky. This unusual rain occurred 6 times over a period of 3 weeks. Initially, residents didn't pay much attention, but shortly afterward, almost everyone in town fell ill with severe flu-like symptoms. These included dizziness, nausea, and respiratory problems, lasting anywhere from a few weeks to several months. One resident claimed their mother took a sample of the jelly for analysis and, viewing it under a microscope, observed some kind of moving cells. Another sample was sent to a laboratory. The initial findings were truly shocking. The blobs contained human leukocytes, white blood cells. This was an inexplicable and truly shocking discovery. How could human cells possibly end up in the rain? Naturally, this fueled a flood of theories. The most popular conspiracy theory suggested this was a biological weapons test. The claim was that military aircraft had sprayed the town with a gel containing living cells to test the effects on the population. This theory gained some traction because Oakville lies directly beneath a frequently used military flight path leading toward the ocean. Another less palatable version linked the incident to commercial airliners. Perhaps the material was frozen toilet waste dumped from a plane. A mix of chemicals and human waste could freeze at altitude, melt and fall as these gelatinous droplets. While this explains the human cellular material, it's a rather disgusting theory and fails to adequately explain the widespread illness. A third, more biological hypothesis suggests the finding wasn't human cells at all, but rather some form of single-celled organisms such as amoebas, mistakenly identified as leukocytes. These organisms might have been carried high into the atmosphere from a body of water before raining down, and the mass sickness could simply have been a coincidence. Perhaps the town was already experiencing a widespread, ordinary flu epidemic. Unfortunately, the mystery of the Oakville blobs will likely remain unsolved. The physical samples of the substance were either lost or degraded, making a comprehensive reanalysis impossible today. All we have left are eyewitness accounts, conflicting initial test results, and a wealth of speculation. Was it a unique atmospheric event, a result of contamination, or something far more sinister? This story remains a strange and disturbing chapter in the annals of unexplained phenomena. Shifting gears from those strange gelatinous downpours, we turn now to a mystery rooted not in physics or biology, but deep within psychology and neurology, the phenomenon of déjà vu. It's a strange feeling almost everyone has experienced at least once. You might walk into a new situation, meet a stranger, or visit a new location, and suddenly you are struck by an overwhelming certainty that you have been here before. Every word spoken, every gesture, every environmental detail feels intensely familiar, like you're rewatching an old movie or reliving a forgotten dream. This sensation only lasts for a few seconds before dissolving, leaving you baffled. What exactly was it? Ancient mystics and esotericists view déjà vu as a memory of past lives. In modern culture, it's often dismissed as a glitch in the matrix. But what does science tell us? Scientists have been studying déjà vu for over a century, yet they still haven't reached a consensus on its causes. It is an incredibly difficult phenomenon to analyse. It's impossible to induce artificially in a lab setting, and its ephemeral nature means it vanishes as quickly as it appears. As a result, most theories are based on circumstantial evidence and models of brain function. One leading hypothesis links déjà vu directly to memory malfunction. Our brain uses different systems for short-term and long-term storage. Perhaps a momentary glitch occurs where information from short-term memory is mistakenly and immediately logged into long-term storage. Consequently, by the time our conscious mind processes the event, the brain interprets it as accessing an old memory, even though the event is happening in the present moment. Another theory, known as the dual processing theory, suggests that incoming sensory information briefly splits into two streams. If one stream is slightly delayed, by the time it reaches the processing center, the brain perceives it as receiving the exact same information for the second time. This is comparable to a slight echo in our perception. A third compelling hypothesis involves the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for forming memories and recognizing familiar patterns. Déjà vu may occur when a single specific element in a new environment, like the shape of a chair or a unique scent, closely resembles something we previously encountered but didn't consciously register. The hippocampus recognizes this isolated familiar component and mistakenly projects that overwhelming sense of familiarity onto the entire situation. Studies indicate that déjà vu is more common in younger individuals and those who travel frequently. It's also known that for certain epilepsy patients, déjà vu can be an aura preceding a seizure, strongly linking it to specific electrical processes within the temporal lobes of the brain. Déjà vu is much more than just a strange hiccup in our perception. It serves as a fascinating window into the complex machinery of memory and consciousness. This fleeting illusion reminds us just how complicated and fragile the process we call reality truly is, and how little we actually know about how our brain constructs it. Let's delve into one of the most tragic and baffling phenomena in the animal kingdom, the mass strandings of whales and dolphins. Picture this distressing spectacle. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, of these marine mammals wash ashore. Rescuers and volunteers desperately try to guide them back to the ocean, but the animals stubbornly return to the beach, where they face certain death from dehydration or crushing under their own weight. The most disturbing element is that science still lacks a definitive answer as to why this happens. Why do these highly intelligent marine mammals commit this seemingly senseless act? There are numerous theories, and it is highly likely that no single cause is responsible. Theory 1. Navigational failure. One of the leading hypotheses involves navigational failure. Whales and dolphins rely on echolocation to navigate, sending out sound pulses and analysing the returning echoes. Perhaps, in certain situations, their internal compass malfunctions. This could be triggered by anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field in specific coastal areas. Indeed, some beaches, notorious for frequent strandings, have complex magnetic topography. Another version links strandings to the features of the seabed terrain. Gently sloping sandy beaches, for example, might poorly reflect echolocation signals, disorienting the animals and inadvertently leading them into a trap. Theory 2. The human factor. The second major group of theories points directly to the anthropogenic, or human factor. The hypothesis regarding the impact of military sonar from ships and submarines is gaining increasing traction. Powerful naval sonars can deafen whales, cause decompression sickness if they surface too quickly in fright, and throw their internal navigation off course. Disturbingly, several mass strandings have been documented that coincided in time and location with naval exercises. We also cannot rule out chemical pollution in the ocean, which may weaken the animals' immune systems and make them more susceptible to disease. Theory 3. Social and biological causes. The third group of hypotheses is social and biological. Whales and dolphins are highly social animals with extremely strong bonds within their pods. If the pod leader is sick, disoriented or injured and strands itself, the rest of the group may follow due to a powerful herding instinct. This explains why they often return to the shore even after being rescued. It is also possible that some strandings are caused by viral infections that affect the animals' brains and nervous systems, thereby compromising their ability to navigate. Most likely, every instance of mass stranding is the result of a unique combination of several factors: natural, anthropogenic, and social. This is an extremely complex problem requiring comprehensive study. Ultimately, this tragedy of the ocean is more than just a biological enigma. It serves as a serious warning to humanity about how our activities, even those unseen and unheard underwater, can have catastrophic consequences for our planet's other inhabitants. Let's look at another major mystery, one tied to instincts and navigational abilities that often seem almost supernatural: the mechanism of animal migration. Every year, millions of creatures, birds, fish, insects and mammals, undertake incredible journeys spanning thousands of kilometers. Monarch butterflies fly from Canada to Mexico. Reindeer cross the Arctic tundra. Humpback whales swim from polar waters down to the tropics. We know why they do it: seeking food, warmer climates, or necessary breeding grounds. But how do they do it? How do these creatures find their way with such staggering accuracy? This is where one of biology's greatest mysteries begins. Take the Arctic tern, for example. These small birds migrate annually from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back, flying up to 90,000 kilometers. They experience more daylight than any other creature on Earth. But how does a young tern, flying for the very first time without its parents to guide it, know exactly where to go? Scientists have discovered that animals possess a complex toolkit for navigation. Like ancient mariners, many orient themselves using the sun. They possess internal clocks that allow them to determine direction, accounting for the sun's shifting position throughout the day. But what happens on cloudy days? It turns out that many animals can navigate using polarized light, which filters through even dense cloud cover. At night, they use the stars. Experiments have shown that birds raised in a planetarium can successfully navigate by a simulated starry sky, but their most astonishing compass is magnetic. Many creatures, from birds and sea turtles to bees and even bacteria, can sense the Earth's magnetic field. Exactly how they do this remains largely unknown. One hypothesis suggests that their eyes contain specialized proteins called cryptochromes. When exposed to light, these proteins become sensitive to the direction of the magnetic field. This implies that birds might literally be able to see magnetic lines. Another theory proposes that tiny particles of magnetite, a naturally magnetic material, exist in their bodies, perhaps in the beak. These particles act like a miniature compass needle that transmits directional information directly to the brain. What about smell? Salmon are born in freshwater rivers, travel to the ocean for several years, and then return to spawn in the exact same river where they were hatched. Research indicates they navigate back by sensing the unique chemical signature, the smell, of their home river, which they imprinted on as tiny fry. Despite all these discoveries, the full picture of the migration mechanism is still incomplete. How do all these systems, solar, stellar, magnetic, and olfactory, work together seamlessly? How are they calibrated? And critically, how is this vital information passed down through generations? This isn't just a random set of instincts. It is a highly complex navigational system, hardwired into the brains of tiny creatures, often surpassing the accuracy and reliability of our own technology. Studying these mechanisms could not only unlock nature's deepest secrets, but also help us engineer advanced navigation systems. For now, we are left to simply marvel at this profound wonder as we watch a V of migrating birds cross the autumn sky. To wrap up our list, let's dive into a profound mystery that challenges our fundamental understanding of Earth's history. The Great Unconformity. Imagine the layers of rock, the pages of Earth's history book as geologists read them. Each layer tells the story of its own epoch, but when reading this global geological record, we encounter a strange, massive gap. In many locations, there's an abrupt transition. Ancient crystalline rocks, sometimes over 1 billion years old, are immediately overlain by much younger sedimentary rocks, like sandstones, dating to around 540 million years ago. Missing between these two are hundreds of millions, sometimes over 1 billion years worth of rock layers. It's as if an entire chapter has been ripped out of the geological history book. This colossal, global geological gap is what we call the Great Unconformity. It was first described by John Wesley Powell in the Grand Canyon in 1869, where it is visible to the naked eye as a sharp boundary between rock types. Since then, it has been identified on every continent. What exactly happened during this lost billion years? Why were sedimentary rocks not deposited or preserved during this vast stretch of time? There are several competing hypotheses, and no single one is universally accepted. One of the leading theories is the BEUS, snowball Earth hypothesis. This suggests that during this critical time, the cryogenian period, Earth endured multiple global glaciations, becoming almost entirely encased in ice from pole to equator. As massive glaciers scraped across the continental surface, they could have stripped away and pulverized enormous layers of rock, sometimes kilometers thick. When the ice finally melted, New, younger sediments began depositing directly onto this newly flattened and scoured surface. While this theory effectively explains the erosion, it struggles to fully account for the phenomenon's global scale and why the transition appears so synchronized worldwide. Another hypothesis links the Great Unconformity to plate tectonics, specifically the formation and subsequent breakup of the supercontinent. Rodinia. Psst. The immense forces involved in assembling and tearing apart this colossal landmass likely caused massive uplift and subsidence of the crust, leading to extreme, widespread erosion. Interestingly, the Great Unconformity's timeline roughly coincides with the SAMS Cambrian explosion, a pivotal period when an incredible diversity of complex, multicellular life suddenly appeared on Earth. Some scientists hypothesize that these two events are fundamentally linked. The massive erosion that created the unconformity would have released colossal amounts of minerals and nutrients, such as phosphorus and calcium, into the oceans. This sudden influx could have been the catalyst for the rapid evolution of life, providing the necessary building blocks for skeletons and shells. The Great Unconformity is far more than just a geological curiosity. It represents one of the most significant unsolved mysteries in our planet's history. Solving it could not only unlock secrets about continental formation, but also provide the missing key to understanding the rapid emergence of complex life on Earth. This gaping void in the rock record speaks volumes about a period of global upheaval and transformation that shaped the world we inhabit today. And so, we've reached the end of our journey through 30 profound mysteries nature has presented to science, from the barely audible desert hum and the accelerating expansion of the universe, to the secrets of self-moving stones and the depths of our own consciousness. We've seen that our world is teeming with phenomena that simply don't fit the established framework, but this is no reason to lose faith in science. Quite the opposite. Every single mystery represents a powerful growth opportunity, a challenge that pushes researchers to the frontiers, forcing us to build new theories and invent revolutionary tools to understand the cosmos. Today, we've only scratched the surface of these enigmas. Behind each one lie years of dedicated research, bold hypotheses, and heated scientific debate. The most astonishing takeaway is that the world around us is far more complex and fascinating than we can often imagine. Perhaps the explanation for the Tao's hum resides in a new branch of psychoacoustics. The secret of ball lightning is hidden within quantum physics, and the answer to the Fermi paradox might redefine life as we know it. Thank you for exploring these concepts with us. If this video has inspired you to think critically and view the world through a slightly different lens, then we've certainly achieved our goal. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming deep dives into the universe's most unbelievable secrets. Now, we have one final question for you. Which of these phenomena completely blew your mind? Or maybe there's a major mystery we overlooked. Share your story in the comments below, and let's get the discussion started.